Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. Welcome to this week's episode. Today I'm talking to Matt Hammond, founder of Talk, Think, Do, a software development company that strives to solve complex business problems with cloud applications. As well as his informed insights into the future of tech, including AI and the metaverse, Matt reveals how he fell into the world of computing almost by accident, looks back on a career that includes time spent in Formula One, discusses how he addressed the challenge of maintaining company culture amid rapid growth, and explains why his experience of running a business has been an overwhelmingly positive one. It's also interesting to note that Matt had thoughts about starting his own company as far back as the mid-1990s, but only started Talk, Think, Do in 2014. I feel this is a great example of how everyone's entrepreneurial journey is different and how sometimes it's about recognising when the moment is right and then seizing and taking that opportunity. Please do enjoy the episode. Welcome, Matt, to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
No, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited about our conversation today. We're going to be talking about your business, Talk, Think, Do. We're going to be talking about AI, the metaverse, all of those kind of things. But we should really start with your own personal journey, Matt.
Yep.
So, as I understand it, 2014, you left corporate life,
Yep.
Having had a successful career in software development and founded Talk, Think, Do. Perhaps for our listeners, just give it a bit of context. How did that come about? And were you always destined, do you think, to start your own business?
So I think I was and it took me a long time to do it. So my dad ran his own business. So when I was young, he was a bit ahead of the game because he was working from home in the 80s, which was more unusual in those days. But he ran a company. He had been at sea and he ran a company selling rope and chain to oil rigs and that sort of thing. So very sort of salesy.
Right.
It was only ever him on his own, and I think he was very hardworking. He put me and my brother through private school, but he would always have clothes with holes in and
all of those,
the same jumper for 20 years, and so I got a really good sense of work ethic from him.
Yeah.
And although I think it was hard at times, I think I could see the benefit of being your own boss and having control of your own destiny.
Yeah.
And then I went through school. I sort of fell into doing software. So I wasn't particularly engaged at school. And I came out and went through clearing at university. Didn't really want to go to university, but my parents were very keen for me to go to university. So I ended up sort of being talked into doing a software engineering course at Bournemouth University. And actually that was... I immediately really liked doing it, and it was I think Bournemouth University do these very vocational courses. Yeah. So they were training you to do a job.
Yeah. So it wasn't necessarily about academia. It was about, I suppose, particularly in that time, in terms of software, it was the practicality. How do you code? How do you make things happen?
Yeah. And then as part of that course, I had a sandwich year in. I went to work for Acorn Computers in Cambridge. But Cambridge at the time was absolutely on fire from a tech point of view. Yeah. So I was working for was the start of ARM. So they spun out ARM. It was just a great place to be in the 90s.
It's really buzzing. And this was sort of mid-90s, was
it? Yeah. And they, we'd have, on Jesus Green, we'd have tech company rounders every Wednesday and going for a pint, and it was just and a punt race once a year of all the tech companies. It was lovely, it's a really lovely place to live.
Yeah.
And it was Silicon Fen, they called it in the day. So.
Silicon Fen.
So that, even by the end of my university degree, I then was totally sold into the industry.
Okay.
Really enjoyed it. Met some great people. But then I guess all through life generally, I definitely suffer from imposter syndrome. I don't think I suffer from imposter syndrome because I think it's quite a positive thing. Yeah. But always thinking, well, I sort of knew I was good at what I did, but you always feel you're not quite good enough.
Yeah.
So I always had this idea that I did want to run my own business, but I wanted to do it as an expert. So I had a great career going through all sorts of different things after that. So from Formula One, so spent 6 years in Formula One doing software, banking, telecom, just all over the place. And all the time on these really great projects, meeting great people, really lucky in how I went, but basically just developing out confidence in what I do and expertise,
really
and
what you do.
and wanting to be really wanting to be seen as expert in what I did, and in tech. Everything's changing all the time, so you have to be learning all the time.
That's definitely going to be part of our conversation today.
But interested, so coming back to my dad having his business.
Yeah.
My first job actually after university was at Foresight, so a local software company. Lots and lots of people from there have gone on to do.
Yeah, a couple of them have been on this podcast.
Yeah. So it's as you go through your career, you have certain places where there's just something going on, and that's definitely one of them. And there's all sorts of businesses.
I can think back. There's certain places where there's a certain buzz or energy or culture.
And that I'm still in touch with most of the people I work with there. A lot of them close friends. One of the things we did when we were there is we had another podcast guest, Chris Croft, come in. So this, I was very young at the time. And did a course on goal setting, I think it was.
Okay.
And one of the things he got us to do at the end was to write down, where do you want to be in 10 years' time? So write down, what do you see yourself doing career-wise? Yeah. Put it in an envelope, and then he said, give them all to me, and I'll post them back to you in 10 years' time. Obviously he didn't.
I would have been impressed at that point.
But I can remember what I wrote down. I wrote down, I want to have a company with a team of experts, 5-10 people, doing, and that, again, that was mid-90s.
Yeah.
Fast forward to 2014, so at that point I'd come out of corporate life, and I was, so it was just me. Yeah. So first 4 years of Talk Think Do was just me.
Okay.
By that point, I guess from a job point of view, I'd gone from a developer, so coder, through to, by that point, probably 10, 15 years as an architect. So, in a software team, you've got the developers who do the coding, you've got the architect who designs the software, and is very often the interface between the sort of business and the tech teams, and just tries to make sure that they're delivering what business wants.
The expectation gap is not too big.
And I'd spent a lot of time, so a lot of the consultancy I did as an architect during that first 4 years was working for companies dealing with external suppliers. So, for instance, Transport for London. They had a mobile program where they were doing mobile apps for staff, so people working tube stations and buses and everywhere. But we had other agencies who were doing development, and my job was to assure that they were doing the right thing and to sort of guide that. So
at what point did you decide, actually, I suppose at that point you're the expert, you're replicating a bit your father's business in that consultancy piece.
Yeah.
And you're on your own. At what point did you think, so this must be, I suppose, around 2018, you thought, actually, I want to develop this and have my own development team and go and do projects for customers?
Well, I think I had it from 2014. So I had the idea that I wanted to grow it.
So that's where you wanted to be, because that comes back to that Chris Croft conversation as well.
I guess one of the challenges with starting a business, because I think I was 41 when I started that, is you've got a lot of financial commitments. You had family, had some school fees, I had, a lot of, and that limits your ability to take risks so much.
I always say I started my business at 30 without kids. My wife had a great job, there was no real financial risk.
Yeah.
I could go for it. I could put my foot on the gas from day one. But
and that's quite
perspective changes when you get older and you've got those responsibilities.
Yeah. So to go from you charge a day rate, and you can make a good living doing that. But if you're sick, if you want to retire, you've got a problem. So to go from that model to then flipping into hiring people and doing something is quite a difficult transition to make. So I spent 4 years trying to work out ways of doing it. Got close to doing it a couple of times, but basically, and I guess it comes back to what we actually do as a business now. So trying to look for some creative commercial models for making it work. And there's a lot of people out there who are paying a lot of money for SaaS software, particularly if they're in a vertical. So you might have Transport for London on one of these. If you've got if you've got a very small set of suppliers who can provide the service you've got, they can charge a lot for it. So quite often these are quite old systems, or they might even have been sort of developed just for you as a client, and then they've developed it for you. You've paid for all the development of it, and then they go out and sell it to other people, and they actually, because you're actually the most difficult client because you're on the oldest version of the code, you don't get very good support. So there's lots of people out there paying big subscription amounts for systems they're really unhappy with. And they also not just unhappy with, but they feel a little bit cheated in terms of, well, we've paid for this, and we don't own it.
You're making a lot of money off others, and you're not giving us the great service.
So the sort of commercial models that I was talking about was, well, if you've got a 4-year contract, because you pay its annual contract, we could actually develop it at risk. So our risk, you get a free system in return for the same sort of contract. You get a brand new system built for your needs. But I think importantly, and this is one of the things that, again, we try to do, you get a license to have the source code to it at the end of it. So you're not tied to us as a supplier. You get to, you don't get to, there's all sorts of issues around intellectual property and the legalities of that.
And the legalities around, sure.
So in my simple terms, you own the code. You don't actually own the code, and there's all sorts, but you have access to be able to use the source code. We would like you to retain us as a supplier to support it. But that's on merit, so you're not tied into us in any way. Off you go, and that's we managed to do a deal of that type to get started.
Wow, but that's challenging for you because that needs a lot of working capital funding.
I guess the benefit I've got, and I do count myself lucky compared to other people that run software businesses, is I can develop. So initially, it was a case of a year or so, and at the time I was commuting up and down to London daily, which is hard in terms of getting up at 4:30 in the morning and getting home at 9, but gave me 2 hours each way on the train
to do the side hustle,
completely focused time,
consultancy piece, and earning your money, and then time to
So I was just working all hours.
Wow.
Doing the development side of it as well to get to the point where we could, and
employ people,
and employ people, and so then got to the point, and so it started very, very slowly in terms of getting that started. But
and if we roll into 2023, headcount now in the business?
So 30 now.
Oh, okay, so this is it's another reason I was really looking forward to this conversation, because that dramatic growth. I think it's been quoted as 750% turnover growth since 2018 or within a 4-year period. You've gone from a headcount of you to 30 in that relatively short period as well. That must be a good feeling, but it must have come with some challenges, Matt.
It has, and I think the growth sort of been obvious and natural, and there was almost unavoidable in terms of...
Is that because of that model that you kind of had?
And because the demand comes and you have to grow to meet the demand. And I think the really big decision for me was taking the first employee on.
Okay.
So suddenly, I had a day rate and I was paying for myself, and I've got responsibility to provide money for my family. But that's it. And because we've got marketable skill set, you don't have to worry too much about finding work But then suddenly going from that to then employing somebody, and they've got a mortgage and they've got kids, and that first person, Serena, who still works with us, who I'd worked with previously, that was a real decision point of okay, I'm going to go into this and I'm going to put foot in the door. From there, it just you just have to meet demand and you have to make it work. And there was, I'd say it's all happened quite quickly, the growth side of it. So it seems like a very long time to me, but it's probably only 3-4 years ago. There's a lot of sleepless nights in terms of I want to make sure I've got secure income in. Obviously, when you start, and particularly starting with having to bootstrap and you haven't got a big buffer of cash in the bank. So it's quite a risky time in terms of you going invoice to invoice. And I felt a real commitment to, we're going to grow sustainably. We're not going to grow to the point where we have to boom and bust.
Hire fire.
And that's difficult. It's a bit easier for us because we do these big projects, and they tend to be multi-year contracts.
So you've got some visibility. But then I suppose that comes back to some of that challenge having been, and the time it took to get to that initial first employee was you wanted to disrupt the model.
Yeah.
And therefore you sort of bucked the trend.
Yeah.
It takes a while for some clients to realise what you're doing, I suppose.
Yeah. And it still takes time. A lot of our business comes through sort of personal referral of people who know me from working.
Yeah.
We're starting now to get referrals to Talk Think Do rather than to me.
Yeah.
For the work we've done, and that's it's a bit of a I talk about the flywheel effect. You can feel it starting to turn now in terms of the business generating business, not me generating business.
It's interesting, at Evolve we talk about the startup phase being that ignite phase, and then scale up, which is clearly where you are, and in the middle of now is being that kind of thrive phase, because you do, like you say, that get that flywheel moving and you start to thrive, but it comes with its own unique challenges. Sometimes I think that startup phase is challenging.
Yeah.
But the risks you're taking are small, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they're usually, like you say, you're taking them based on personal risk.
Yeah.
And then the value set that I can see in you, Matt, is that actually you would have taken that responsibility of building the business and scaling it with nearly more responsibility than walking out on that last job to start up on your own as a consultant.
Definitely, but I also say I think from taking some initial very small risks, I think in my view, my risk appetite's gone up as you sort of have success doing it, and I'm more happy to take risks now. I mean, we quite early on, so we use Xero for our accounting software.
Yeah.
We use an add-on called Float, which is gives us a really good view of cash flow, and that we use for everything. So we've got a really detailed view of cash flow. We know contractually. Yeah. We've got positive cash flow probably much further in the future than other similar sized businesses, and we manage everything off that. So
cash is king in the world.
Well, absolutely. I think it's and certainly from an accountancy point of view, there's all sorts of funnies that happen in terms of accountancy which don't really make sense as a business owner. And I think that obviously you can't look at cash in the bank as a way of driving it. But that cash flow protection is brilliant, I think, and it's been an absolute lifeline in terms of making the right decisions.
Brilliant. And if you think about some of those challenges, you talk about sleepless nights. If it's away from that cash and that responsibility for people, what else has kept you awake as you've grown the business in the last few years?
Well, I think what's become really, because we have grown it's been fairly steady. Yeah. So and it might the biggest growth has probably been in the last year, so we've sort of doubled over a year. Okay. I think January we had 4 starters in more or less the same time. So the rate, as you get bigger, the sort of rate of increase gets bigger as well. And the culture is so important to the company, and sort of it's such an important part of things, and the company's had such a good feeling. Within the start, we've all got a real buzz around it. Maintaining that culture, as the quicker you start to grow, the harder it is to make sure that culture is maintained. We hire to our sort of core values all the time to make sure we're hiring the right people, and we're doing a good job on that. But it's still just making sure that
that risk of dilution is there, isn't it? If you grow quickly, some of it. I think it's that piece about sometimes culture grows with the business and it stays with the business because it's the way of the business, and but as you add people, you have got to be more conscious about explaining what the values of the business are, what the behaviours you want are, but also managing to culture and behaviours.
Yes.
You can hire to it,
yes,
but you've then got to manage to it and be seen to do the right thing when needed.
Yeah, and it's we are really strong on core values. It's really key. And I always thought that when I was in corporate world, I thought they're very cheesy.
Yeah,
and they're still
get caught on a wall. So this is time and time again.
And to be honest, ours are open and honest, team first, do what you say, quietly confident, and then my favourite, love what you do.
Yeah,
they're all actually quite. They could apply to lots of businesses. It's how you demonstrate them and how you do it, and they're really important to us.
Living and breathing them, isn't it? Because as soon as you don't live and breathe them, then it becomes a little bit of a mock.
And it's also, but it gives you a really nice framework because nobody sticks to them all the time. Everyone has bad days or days where they don't quite exhibit them, but it gives you a way of, if somebody's been a bit thinking of themselves or team first, and they just come out as little checks that everybody uses on everyone else to keep things going.
Brilliant.
And I think that's one challenge in growth is keeping the culture.
Yeah.
Because when you're onto a good thing, I guess you don't want that to go off the boil. The other one is it's as you grow, you obviously got the people who came in early, and there's a lot of change going on. So it's everyone loves a small company feel. Yeah. And it's just making sure that everybody's, sort of with you on the journey, but also it's, it can be uncomfortable in terms of the change and having to let go sometimes of things that you had.
Yeah, and how have you managed? Because that whole change curve and managing change through growth, I think, is one of the most difficult things to do during that scale up period. So, how have you addressed change management in the business?
We've done it quite thoughtfully and carefully, I guess. So, one of the things that, again, the values tie back to. So we use, we put structure in a long way before we needed it in terms of growth.
Okay.
So we use the traction book, but EOS, so entrepreneurial operating system. Which gave us a structure. We put it in when there's four of us. So we put in this fairly heavy management structure, which seemed a bit ridiculous at the time. Yeah. When there was four of us to the weekly meetings, the metrics that you check. Yeah. And actually the values are a really strong part of that. Doing a vision once a year, doing quarterly reviews of where you are against that. It's all common sense. Yeah. And I was looking at putting something similar in. I read the book and I just thought, well, it's better to pick something off the shelf. And
so it was one of those books we all get them time to time, don't we? We can all probably name them. Is that we pick up a book and it actually does resonate and it goes, right, I'm going to do this. Yeah. And it's got, again, it's cheesy. Yeah. Lots of trademark terminology for, I can't call it a goal, I call it a rock. Yeah. But it's great picking stuff off the shelf because there's books available, new stuff come in and we've got guides to it, and everyone. It also stops you spending time tweaking things unnecessarily. Well, I can see that because we sort of I look at a lot of businesses I've worked with and some of them that I've run and we've sort of developed our own systems. And then you pick up that kind of I've read traction and you go, we're doing a lot of that. Yeah. But we went through a lot of pain and lessons to get to the point where actually if you'd have read the book and just applied it. And I can see all these sort of things. Actually, if you put them in when you're small, there's very little pain in doing it. Apart from you feel a bit stupid sometimes. So it feels a bit heavyweight in what you're doing, but it's massively benefited us. But congratulations on you on keeping that kind of determination and focus and discipline. I suppose is a good word of keeping the system going with the belief that you're going to grow and it was all going to become more relevant. I suppose. Yeah. And I think the goal setting is an important part of that because there's lots of decisions. You look at the cash flow. There's decisions you make because it's easy to sort of think, not get complacent, but to you're in a good place. You don't have to grow. There's no law that says you have to grow. And actually, you could keep things going. But if you've got a vision, actually, this is where we thought we'd get to a year ago. Yeah. So if you're looking at do we hire somebody ahead of the curve of demand or not, and you might, if you were less goal focused, you might choose not to, and no, we're going to need them. That's where we're going. Yeah. So it really helps in those decisions. I think it's really important. Brilliant. And through this process, read the other day that you've appointed, Louise, who's been with you for a number of years, into the role of MD last year, so in October 22. Previously, you're Chief Operating Officer.
Yeah.
As a founder, was that a difficult decision to step down from being the MD?
I guess yes and no.
Yeah.
Louise, she was COO.
Yeah.
In reality, she was running the business.
Okay.
So, again, in EOS, they focus, and this is one of the things that I guess attracted me to it in the first place, because Louise is one of those 4 initially. So they talk about the visionary role, which sets where we're going and sort of has an idea, and the integrator role, who it basically makes it happen.
Yeah.
And those 2 roles sort of sit across everyone else. So, the integrator can dive into any team and get stuff going.
Yeah.
And we were working very much like that. So I'm very much I can see where we're going, and I can, both at the business level and at project level, I can see what this client needs. And Louise is sort of exceptional at
systems processes,
at making
driving
it work.
And actually driving the business.
So that was already going on, and I wasn't, I was CEO, and also, I tend to be the person who goes out and sees clients when they've first talked to us. It doesn't really sit right, the CEO's going out to all these meetings. Okay. It's more as an architect and as my technical background, I was going to have these meetings. So it's sort of made sense from that point of view. But from a personal point of view, your identity, you've started this business, and the identity of it, and you are.
Identity, isn't it?
It was, which is why I'm. So actually going from CEO to founder, it's quite a small change.
Yeah,
it doesn't, but I had a little bit of not a wobble, but it took a bit of adjustment.
Must have had a moment, definitely, because it's that, it's been your baby, isn't it? And you feel like, I suppose again, compliments to you, but sometimes the ego can get in the way, can't it? The ego would have said, no, I need that. Yeah. I can call myself founder, but I need to call myself founder and MD, and I need all of that status. Yeah. Whereas actually you're saying the right thing for the business is that this time we need somebody doing that MD role as their role, and I can be the founder and I can do the things I want to do. Yeah. And are you enjoying being in the business more since that transition from Louise taking MD? Now you've adjusted?
I am busier, I'd say, because I'm doing. I guess we're in a particularly busy period at the moment. So as you grow, because demand grows, but you don't grow in line with demand. You have steps. So sometimes you're slightly under, sometimes you're slightly over. It's been the start to this year has been really difficult in terms of time management. Okay. But I do enjoy. One of the things that and I think Louise is the same. We work very much as a sort of pair and a team. Yeah. One of the things when you run a business is just the variety of things that you have to learn. Yeah. Yeah, you're out of your comfort zone all the time. There's always something that you haven't done before that you're having to learn to quite a high level. You have to know quite a lot about
a lot of things.
And I really like that. I've learned all marketing and PR and finance and lots of things to a degree that I never had some awareness of before. But
and where do you want to take the business? What's next for Talk Think Do?
So we've got quite a clear plan. Okay. So we're on a steady growth plan. So we sort of know the size and the numbers we want to be in end of this year and 3 years' time. We've got quite a lot of opportunity in the US. Okay. So we see, again, not immediately, but within the 3-year period, opening office in the US. We're also looking at providing 24/7 cover ourselves, and we use some external partners at the moment, but that would be probably an office in the Far East somewhere, and using the office in the US. It's very, because the market for developers is very hard to hire good developers, and there's even with all the layoffs in the States, there's still a supply and demand problem. It's very hard to hire really highly skilled developers and get them to work out of hours. It's pretty much impossible. So the only model really to do it is to spread people geographically. Model. So that's very much on our line. And then we are, for our size, we've just sort of crept into the new Microsoft Partner Program, which is it's much more skewed towards big partners now. And we're quite niche in what we do. So most Microsoft partners do Office and all these things.
Yeah.
We are very targeted on building this cloud native software, and we've got we want to really be seen as the best in that niche. We've got no plans to sort of go wide on what we do.
And that niche has always been your focus. The niching down was one of the principles when you started the business.
Yeah, and it's what we do. We've hired a group of experts who do that.
Yeah.
So we're not going to start offering services that we don't feel expert in. There are things we're looking at doing which are outside what we currently do, but we won't offer it as a service until we've hired the people and we're confident that we can do a really good job on it.
Fantastic. That's great. And I need to come back to, because you talked there about, and it's across the board in all industries, isn't it? The scarcity of resource. What do you put your success down to in terms of recruitment over the last few years? Because they've gone from 4 to 30.
Yeah.
And still, adding headcount to it now means you've been successful where perhaps others haven't in that recruitment market. So, what do you put that down to, Matt?
It's not all. So, we are heavily sort of technical, but it's not all technical resource we have. So we have business analysts and we have project managers. Certainly on the technical side, I guess the fact that I used to develop, and I always had an idea of building a company that's the sort of company I would have wanted to work for.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've got a technical founder. It's not, there's a lot of software companies where it's very sales focused. So, and when it is, you quite often, someone will sell something with a deadline that may or may not be realistic, and then the pressure comes on the dev team. I think the fact it's technically led, and the fact that I've thought hard about what I think is attractive to developers, and particularly the sort of work we do. We do generally more meaningful, more complex systems than a lot of other companies do, and we use the latest technologies, and it's those sorts of things which actually appeal more to people.
It's a good blend, isn't it, I suppose? Yeah, I can see how that would work. I want to just touch on, before we go and talk about AI and the future of tech and all of those kind of things, just something you said nearly in the opening response is you said about suffering from the imposter syndrome, which so many of us do. But you saw it as a positive thing. Yeah. And I just thought I'd ask, could you put that into a bit more context?
And I see it when you hire. I do think it's. I really like it as a quality in others. So and I know certainly Louise is the same. Again, because we're always out of our comfort zone. You're always feeling that you're
not quite good enough. Yeah.
To do something, and quietly confident is one of our values.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Which is exactly that. It's sort of obviously you don't want to be completely debilitated by the feeling that you're not good enough. But I think that constant growth, that confidence in what you can do, but the filling the gaps in the things that you feel you can't, and you can't, like I say, in tech you cannot stand still. There is more so now than ever. Things are moving at a faster pace than they ever were before. If you sort of get complacent, and I guess the other, obviously for quietly confident, the other thing is you don't want arrogance. No. So, and almost imposter syndrome and arrogance are completely mutually exclusive. So.
Okay, no, that's good. So, perhaps we should start. Want to have a conversation just about AI briefly, but possibly should think about just asking you, from a software engineering, software development point of view, you pick up, just a general newspaper now, and it says that AI's got the ability to write code and all of that kind of stuff. Where do you see the change going in terms of that human interaction with writing code and software development, with it being kind of machine written? And are we there already? What does your industry in terms of software development look like in the years ahead, do you think?
I think there's definitely more automation going on, and there's generally been over the last 25 years there's been a leveling up in terms of the blocks that you use to build software. Okay. So you constantly being able to do more and more and more with less in terms of effort.
And is that because they've had open source software?
It's open source, it's the public cloud, so that's made a massive difference. There's always open source is a big part of that, because you can stand on the shoulders of other people's work. But it's I think there's all that's gone on. You have now got AI, and you've got all these pieces, and I think the actual particularly something called Copilot. So GitHub Copilot is the I think it's the first commercialization actually of all of the technology behind ChatGPT. So it's GitHub's owned by Microsoft. Microsoft invested OpenAI. A lot's gone into this. So it's very advanced in terms of what it can do, and all of our team have got it. It was released to sort of businesses in November last year. I haven't seen it made a massive difference in terms of productivity, but supposedly it's developers who use it, and there's a load of research, are more satisfied in their job because the mundane stuff gets automated out quite quickly. And I think that's generally the way it will become more and more so. But it's more that there's still, even now, there's still quite a lot of sort of what we call boilerplate, mundane, repetitive bits that need to be done, and I think they're more likely to be eliminated as time goes on.
The next few years by AI, and then you still have human interaction.
Yeah, and one of the things that one of the things we're working on at the moment, have been working for a couple of years, is actually a product called Code Native that uses some of that, but actually automates the process we go through to build software for people. So long-term plans for us is to do more of the build more of our systems using that, and to also then commercialise that as a product. I guess the concern that there's always been with any job, you see robotics and AI coming out, is at what point does my job disappear because that gets automated away? So much of the work we do is in the what's your problem, how do we solve it, and the creating the software that does it is going to get more and more automated. Actually understanding where someone wants to go and getting that bit done, I don't see that going anywhere soon.
And if we just talk about, I suppose it is really coming to the public domain, isn't it, AI, and that rapid advancement that we've got. What excites you about that in terms of general life, and what are the aspects that you think, coming from a tech background, you'd be wary of? So I've had a lot of conversations. So lots of people have been talking to me about ChatGPT and stuff. There's a lot of ideas out there. I'm actually not. So a lot of the technology behind it has been around for a while, and actually is ingrained in all sorts of things already. Obviously, ChatGPT came to it the wider public's attention. Kind of attention, isn't it?
And that's it's suddenly made available the idea of what the possibilities are to people. There's a few challenges with it. So one is, and the way I see it almost as, you've got predictive text. It's a slightly more advanced version of that. But partly, it's very good at understanding. So like predictive text. You on that, it's predicting the next word. This is taking what you're putting in and predicting more than the next word. So actually, and I get some, I then can infer some context around what you're saying, and I understand the sort of problem you're doing. That's one part of it. On the other part, which it's really good at, is it can then generate output. So if give me the answer to this in the voice of a 5-year-old, it really understands language and how to understand it and how to generate it. The bit that I think is the weak link at the moment is the bit in the middle of the actual knowledge. So, and certainly when you look at big businesses using it, even for things like automating support chat responses, which is a really obvious way to plug it in to start with, is the unreliability of what, certainly the ChatGPT service that's trained on the public data, which is the one that everyone's been playing with. It's almost like, is it sort of almost just put an answer in Google. So if you're putting that in your business as a chat agent, trying to support somebody buying car insurance, it's totally unpredictable what it's going to come up with. So it sort of isn't really appropriate for that sort of thing at the moment. It is, you can use it if you use the understanding bit, the generating bit, and put your own model in the middle of that's more tailored to the questions you want to answer. But there's much more development in that than there is in just the standard stuff. And the other side of it, which is because it's been free, ChatGPT, everyone's got this idea that it's free. It's going to be like Google, but it's only free because they want the data of usage to train it. It actually requires some really specialist hardware. So there's a big race on between Google, Microsoft, to acquire the hardware, to build out the server farms in the cloud, to be able to then service the demand of these requests going through, and it's going to be pretty expensive because of that.
Okay.
So as a service, you can't think I'm going to do a startup using free.
Yeah.
It's not going to be anything like that. It's going to be quite costly.
Okay. Watch this space, definitely. And the other thing that gets talked about a lot, I suppose it's slightly outside of your sphere, but it is tech and software, is the metaverse.
Yes.
And there's, again, probably been a lot of hype 18 months, 2 years ago at the metaverse, and that, we'd all be living in the metaverses as well as the real world, all of those kind of things. Where do you think that's all headed?
So I got a little bit sceptical about ChatGPT and OpenAI. I'm pretty dismissive, to be honest, of the metaverse. Yeah. I think my kids have had Roblox and Minecraft.
Yeah.
That's the metaverse. I can't see. I just can't see.
That's all coexisting.
No, and I think and obviously the pandemic's caused this massive acceleration of remote working and hybrid working, but just in terms of the hardware and I can't see people with their VR headset on having the water cooler moment. It's just not. And I think even the hybrid and remote, I can see there's more of the human contact coming back into working life anyway now. So I just don't see that you can replicate that with technology.
Wow. Great. The techie person's reassured me. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. Just, I suppose, a couple of questions to finish with. If there's somebody listening to this podcast, perhaps working in corporate life, thinking, I really would like to start my own business, any words of advice?
I think, for me, that it's just being aware of the amount of hard work. You almost have to do two jobs at once to be able to do it. So even if you're transitioning to start a limited company and I can consult through it, I've still got to provide good service to my client during the day and do extra work. So
build the business at night. Yeah,
and I think I've got so many great people I've met over my career that they're some of my customers now or employees. That networking that you build up over years is just so important. So investing in that and people you meet and being nice to people. Being
human.
Yeah,
definitely. And if you reflect now, you're really honest at the start about the journey, and I suppose that influence and aspiration your dad gave you. Yeah. What would you say has been the effect of you being entrepreneurial and starting your own business on your own family and personal life?
I think it's been overwhelmingly positive. I'd say it has. I guess I always feel that people don't get enough of my time. So you are stretched when you're running a company, and you've got to balance home life with work life, and you've got different employees and clients, and you're always failing in terms of you can never provide everyone what they want. But I do actually. One thing I have done is prioritise family over other things. So if anything's dropped, it's probably not family. So so I feel I don't have that feeling of guilt in terms of missing things and that sort of thing, which is good. And I can also see, because as the kids are getting older, they're more interested in the bit. You can see I was on the train going up to London with people from work, and my daughter was going to school yesterday, and she's just really interested in, and you can see it. Just like with my dad.
You're just subsuming it. No, definitely. And I always end the conversation with this question. So, what is your definition of success, man?
So I think it's changed. So I think when I started the business, I probably had the very classic entrepreneur. Okay, I'm hitting 40. What I'll do is I'll start a business, grow it, exit. Then I can do what I like. And as time's gone on, you think, well, I'm not sure I want to do that. So I'm not sure. You get so much reward out of running the business and sort of intellectual stimulation from continually learning. Actually, that going could be really difficult, I think. And then the other thing is, actually, what would I do with my time? So, and I think there's no point even thinking about retiring until you and certainly speaking to other people who've been through this, you want to be quite specific about what you're going to spend your time doing.
Definitely.
And overall, being happy is success. So, and it's what is happiness, and and you need to think about what makes you happy. At the moment, I'm very happy. So, if I stopped and retired tomorrow and had time on my hands, I've got to think carefully before I do that about what's going to make me happy.
You refer to, I've seen it, help clients, think that actually, happiness is building a business, is exiting a business, having those millions of pounds in the bank, and they can quite become most unhappy people because there's no purpose.
Yeah, and I've seen lots of people that, they achieve, they get achievement.
Yeah.
It doesn't bring you really any happiness at all. It's just, okay, what's next?
Brilliant reflection to end our conversation, Matt. If people want to know more about you, more about Talk, Think, Do, where can they go?
So anyone can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, or we've got talkthinkdo.com.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matt. I've really loved our conversation, really relevant to anybody who's thinking of or in that process of starting a business, but also to those listeners that are scaling and developing their business as well. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.